You know what the funny thing is that Kiss sucks. And so
I was gonna say, yeah, such the writers of such excellent songs as "Love Gun" and "Lick It Up."
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 1001 Album Complaints. It's the show where friends and musicians get together to discuss an album from Robert Dimery's list of the 1001 albums you must hear before you die. So each week we pick an album at random from the list, we listen to it 20 or 30 times, and let you know, dear listener, if you actually need to hear it before you die. At the end of the episode, we'll all vote and pick next week's album. Now remember, if you haven't had time to listen to this week's album, don't worry, we're going to have plenty of clips that we'll drop in along the way, as well as a playlist of all the random crap I'm sure we'll reference during the episode. Also, don't forget that if you're digging what you're hearing, go ahead and like or subscribe or write a review on your favorite podcasting platform, or better yet, tell a friend about us and help spread the word. We appreciate it. So this week we've been listening to a band that, upon first hearing them, Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine fame said, "This is music for crazy people." That's right. I'm talking about System of a Down and their self-titled debut album from 1998. Now let's get right into the music with the opening track off this album, and then we'll come back with some introductions and our usual tweet-length reviews. So here's the first track, titled Sweet Pea. Take note that sweet is spelled S-U-I-T-E and P is spelled P-E-E. Here it comes. Sweet. That's a lot. So let's throw it around the room. Alan, why don't you take it first?
Yeah, this is Alan. So I'm pretty sure that this came out a year or so after the debut albums for Creed and Limp Bizkit. So I guess I can kind of see why people thought this was good.
ouch.
No.
Oh man.
All right.
Hey, this is Rob here. I don't know what you're talking about. This album has everything. And by everything, I mean high-pitched screaming, low-pitched screaming, and mid-pitched yodeling.
All right, this is Tom here. I'm going to do my tweet-length review here. This is my impression of Robert Dimery making the review for why this album belongs in the list. With monster hits like Chop Suey, Toxicity, and Aerials, this album makes a clear case for... Wait, what? Oh, no, that's their second album? Oh, shit. Okay. You know what? Let's just keep it on the list anyway. Just keep it on the list.
Yeah, why put the good ones
Keep
on?
them rolling.
Right.
No time to go back and edit this list.
Although hasn't he been phasing? Does he phase certain ones out as he adds new ones? Like, how does that?
Is it
work?
a steady 1,000 as the years progress? We should look into that. I'm pretty lazy, though. So
Actually, just
I don't know
kidding.
that I'll
We've
be-
done all our research. We know. We know this.
No, it's gonna blow your mind. I do know the answer to this question. Listen, but I don't know if it's Robert Dimery himself or his estate or somebody managing him in a care facility or whatever. But there's some kind of collective or concern that manages this list and adds things to it periodically and drops other stuff off. Yes.
Ah, all right.
He should hire us to be the ones that drop things. I feel like we'd really be in our element.
Trim this right down.
This is a curated list, is what you're telling me. All right, so this is Adam, and my quick tweet-length review is I am doubling down on what I said about the B-52s, that the B-52s were a System of a Down album without the blast beats. I'm going to go hard on that and say that System of a Down are the B-52s with plenty of blast beats. So that's my quick take.
Is that a positive thing?
It's just a thing.
What the
And
heck
I
is
think
a
I know
blast beat? What does
Aren't
that
the
even
blast
mean?
beats? It's a technique where it's like super fast, alternating snare kick, but at like lightning speed for a short amount of time. At least from what I understand of metal and new metal. Yeah, like. But it's usually done with 64th note precision, which is pretty tight.
I always thought that was double bass drum, but
I think that can be involved.
There
in
definitely
there as well.
is some double bass. Well, hold on. Can we get an intrepid fan started on the Fred Schneider System of a Down mashup that I think we're all craving right now?
Sure, somebody from Wolfpack will put that together for us.
Wake up!
So, yes, we've been listening to System of a Down's debut album from 1998. It has been an assault on the senses this week, and perhaps we can do a little bit of history, and we'll intersperse it with how you guys got through your week. I joked about listening to an album 20 or 30 times. I definitely did not get through this 20 or 30 times. It is a long album, coming in, I think, over 50 minutes, which is a lot of metal. Coming in over 40 minutes, which is a lot of metal for a single.
Yeah, 40 minutes.
It's not actually long, is
It
the point.
felt a lot longer.
Maybe it just felt
It definitely
really long.
Definitely felt longer.
Yeah. So if you want to talk about System of a Down and this album, we're actually going to take a trip back over 100 years to 1915 Armenia. You'll see this theme come up a lot with System of a Down, and it kind of became a personal battle for Serj Tankian, the lead singer. But in 1915, the Ottoman Empire, which is today Turkey, basically during World War I slaughtered anywhere between 800,000 and 1.5 million ethnic Armenians.
Allegedly. No, it definitely happened, but the Turkish government pushes back very hard against that.
Right. And Serj Tankian, his grandparents, escaped that genocide as children. They came over and lived at an orphanage in Lebanon. They subsequently had Serj's parents in the late 1930s. Serj Tankian was born into Lebanon as a result of the family migrating. But at 7 years old, there was a civil war in Lebanon, and his whole family was forced to flee to California. So there's a lot of strife building in this guy's life. And I'm talking about Serj Tankian because after watching a documentary that he recently made, I think a year ago, it's called Truth to Power. And it's his own story of telling about where he came from, how System of a Down came up, social justice, all this stuff. It's really Serj focused. So you might even call this band Serj Tankian Presents System of a Down. It's very focused on him lyrically, his political message, all that stuff.
But he doesn't actually write the lyrics, or does he write all the lyrics on this one?
He writes most of the lyrics on this one, if not all of them.
Because I realized coming in, I did think of him as the front man of the band. He's the most well-known persona. But then when I was breezing through some of their old interviews, it just seemed more and more like the guitar player was the driving force behind the band. And that frankly, which I'm sure we're going to talk about via the individual songs, these lyrics, terrible is the word that comes to mind.
Yeah, they're trying. When you go online and read on some of these websites that try to interpret lyrics for you, it's a bit of a stretch. There's a couple tunes that are dead on the nose, one that we'll get to that's specifically about the Armenian genocide. But the rest are, man, you're definitely stretching it a bit to make it fit what the narrative
I just have one
thread
question.
is.
Do you ever feel like you've been stuck in the sky?
60 times, do they say that? I forget.
You know, there are some bands where you can't understand what the singer is saying, and then you read the lyrics, and you're like, "Oh, wow, cool." And this is one of those ones where I was like, "You know what? It's cool. I don't need to understand what you're saying." When I read,
you
them
might
out,
as
I was
well
like, "These are
not. Yeah,
terrible."
the scream is fine.
Speaking of that, there was one instance on one of these songs where I wrote down what I thought was a joke interpretation of what I was hearing. It turned out that was far too accurate. So.
Was it about the kombucha mushroom people?
It was about the kombucha mushroom.
My favorite
Fuck
line
those
on the
people.
album that has been going through my head all week.
But yes, Alan, I would agree. Fuck those people, but still.
So Serj grows up from 7 years old in the U.S. He has pretty vivid recollections of the Civil War in Lebanon. There are other songs later on in other albums that are specifically around him, the feelings that he had cowering in his room as a child as the bombs fell from the war that was going on around him. He and the other band members went to the same Armenian school that was set up in a section of Los Angeles, a very tight-knit Armenian community. And they all just kind of started playing around together. Eventually, they wound up forming what is now the lineup for System of a Down. They had a couple, Serj specifically was part of two other bands. The first one, was together for 6 months, and they had one show at like a community center, which I don't even know why you would call that your band, but
Well, I wanted to throw out there
there.
that maybe this is the kind of thing that's sort of well known in California, but they're from a part of LA called Glendale. And I've heard that as a result of the Armenian genocide, there's actually more Armenians in Glendale than there are in Armenia.
that is right. Yes, the largest diaspora of Armenians, is in California, which is very interesting.
I was a little bit, I don't even know if impressed is the word, but the fact that they had 4 members, all Armenians, and then the original drummer like shatters his hand, like fucks his hand up really bad, and they found another Armenian drummer. They're like, "Come on in, yeah."
There's a lot of Armos.
I know
you got to have good bench strength if you're gonna start.
Right.
Well, it's like, what is there like an application process where they like list your ethnicity and they're just like Polish?
So
No, sorry, buddy.
That's a good question. I bet, did they make that a prereq of joining the band?
Well, I wonder if it's more that's probably. Well, I don't want to say that's the only people they knew, but like there's a good chance that those were the people they associated with, and probably pick some guy from high school. Who knows?
I brought up the Glendale thing because I'm just trying to make it clear that even though Armenia is a relatively small country, and maybe to some listeners or folks in America, they might not get the context that it is a very large community, specifically localized in LA, in Glendale. But the
Kardashians, man.
The Kardashians are also Armenian. Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Well,
It's the IAN. Like all the end of your last name is like, if you look at all their last names, I believe in the band have the IAN at the end, and it's like
Tonkian, Malakian, Odagian, and Dolmayan. Yeah. So in 1994, System of a Down is formed. And they were one of these bands that did come up by just playing small clubs and cutting demos. There was nobody rolled out the red carpet for them necessarily. So they put out a series of demos, I think 4 or 5 demo tapes, between 1994 and 1997. So at this time, when they started doing these demos, Serge Tankian, the lead singer, is 28 years old. Darren Malakian is the guitarist. He's 20. Shavo Udagian is 21. He's the bassist. And John Dolmayan, 22, is the drummer. So they're younger guys, but Serge, kind of the leader of the band, he's got a good 8 years on the youngest guy. So it's a big span, and he's a bit more, I'll say, mature in his writing style.
Really comes through.
Oh, totally. Yes, you can absolutely see when...
Sarcasm, audience.
So demo number 4 was sent out to Rick Rubin, and this is in 1997. It contained 13 songs, 5 of which wind up on this album. There's a classic story that they were going to play the Viper Room, and at the time they did have a manager, and the manager said,
"Isn't that the place where River Phoenix died?"
Yes.
Oh, Jesus.
Anyway,
that's correct. Yeah,
that's depressing.
Anyway,
so they're at the Viper Room. Rick Rubin shows up, and I think Tom Morello was actually with him as well, and that's when he noted that this is music for crazy people.
I like how, by the way, the story of them sort of playing at the Viper Room, it was the guitar player was apparently just like constantly calling, and said he called like every day and was just like, "Can we play? Can we play? Can we play? Can we play?" And eventually they were like, "We'll give you tickets, and if you can sell the tickets, like you can play a show." And then they're talking about how it was this like huge smash success, and they sold 150 tickets, and 150 kids showed up just to see their band play, and then left right after. I'm like, that doesn't sound like a good show, if I'm being honest. Like 150 kids show up and then leave immediately after that band is done.
To put it in perspective, that would have been great for one of our bands, but that's not good for like a
Rick Rubin ain't coming to see us play.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But it also does speak to, I mean, they did ground up build a following, right? It wasn't, there was no huge influx that pushed them on the billboards. They had that show. Rick Rubin shows up. After that show, he walks up to them and says, "I want to sign you guys. You're unlike anything I've ever heard before."
Well, that's true. I buy that.
That's definitely true.
So Rick Rubin, in later years, mentioned that when he saw them, he said that he thought that they sounded like ancient folk music mixed with heavy metal. And you do get some of that on here.
Sure.
Which I appreciated. So a lot of labels, as they were trying to get signed, were scared of them because they noted, how do you market for Armenian guys whose main message is recognition of an atrocity that happened over 100 years ago. That's not a good tagline, right?
Is that really the problem?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, how do you market this music, like, period?
Yeah. It's do you have fond remembrances of being at the carnival in the House of Mirrors?
Does your child have undiagnosed ADHD? Do you want to have something to keep them occupied?
Do you feel nothing but anger all the time?
So they fall into that genre called nu metal. You talked about it a little bit on the Kid Rock episode, which I was not present
rocking
for.
up and down the blocks.
But I think you guys did a phenomenal job on the Kid Rock episode. I haven't laughed that hard in quite some time. So well done. But this is considered nu metal and alternative metal. Tom, you talked about the things that define nu metal are, it's not really that complicated. There's not a lot of intricate work. It's really quite simple, super dropped. These guys, most of their tunes are in drop C. For our listeners,
super sludgy.
Yeah, standard tuning on a guitar is an E note. These guys drop it down 2 full whole steps. So you get a super low, well, just as Alan said, sludgy. Darren plays a baritone guitar as well. So it's a baritone, also drop C. So you have a super low mud sound.
Just everybody plays bass at this point? Is that what's going on?
It's almost what it is.
Actually, I can get down with this.
Yeah.
There are picks involved, though.
I felt like when I was
picking.
I felt like when I was listening to this, there were parts of it that sounded to me like, I was like, oh, this sounds a little bit like Alice in Chains, but like without any of the good parts of Alice in Chains.
Yeah. I will say the times that they used harmony, I was like, oh, that's good. When, like, because Serge has a good voice. He really does have a powerful voice. He's
sounds
really
great.
good voice. You throw in a low harmony on that or like himself harmonizing above it, and it sounds really good. I could have used a lot more of that on this album.
And that is something that, so this, my experience with this album, this is the first time I've listened to this album. I had listened to Toxicity back in the mid 2000s, and then they had a double album set that came out after that called Mesmerized and Hypnotized. It was one of these albums that came out right when I was playing, 5 nights a week, and our band, we would have that in the van, just playing that constantly. We were all just freaking out, like, this is the weirdest sounding thing, this is great. Lots of crazy tempo changes. Their music got a lot more melodic and more complex compared to this, I would say. So this was an interesting first look at where they came from, but having listened to all their albums, I can see that progression of how this led to what ultimately, again, is more melodic, I think a little more complex.
Let's throw 2 things out there right away, because you mentioned that nu metal in our previous definition meant that it stripped away a lot of the complexities that were in this genre of speed metal. Nothing about this is simple. From the vocals to they're technically proficient players, I think is fairly obvious from listening to it.
I think that's fair.
So I'm not objecting to that. I don't put it in the same category as Kid Rock in that sense, where everything just felt like studio musicians having a snooze while they were playing it, right?
Right.
And certainly Serge, vocally, is pretty wild. He's a pretty wild talent. He has a huge vocal range, and he sings in all these different styles, sometimes within the same verse, which makes it quite disconcerting. It makes it seem like a joke. So I'll tell you that this was a rough week for me. I couldn't possibly relate less to this music, I have to be honest with you. However, and the emotions that are being expressed. But if you can recontextualize this as some kind of absurdist joke, do they know how ridiculous they sound? Because it sounds very self-serious to me.
They have to, because
it is self-serious, yeah.
So much of it is, there's just, I didn't write down which songs this happened on, but it was many, where there would just be random noises in the background and just screaming. It's almost sounded like, the only thing I can think, and I don't even mean this in the shitty way it's going to sound, but I remember the first time I ever got like a microphone when I was a kid, and I could actually record and hear myself, and I would just be like, and there's like shit like that that's happening in the background, and it's like, they have to be just fucking around.
Yeah. Well, one of the musical touchstones, we could talk about some of the musical touchstones, but one that kept jumping out to me was Weird Al. But I know he's joking.
Yeah, these guys take themselves really seriously. So Serge, again, this documentary that I watched, he considers himself a poet and an activist, and he got into artwork later. So he's one of these guys that really considers himself an artist. And I get it. It's weird.
I like them
that
a lot
would-
less now on hearing.
You-
Honestly, I
Right.
like them a lot
You
less.
were hoping he
yeah.
was just a dude.
I thought that it was like, oh, his like really goofy personality really shines through. This is playful. And the fact that you're telling me that he's like, no, this is not playful. This
They
is
are-
my life. Million
dead
people were
serious.
slaughtered in 1915. I'm like, I'm sorry. I don't really fucking care. Like, I
Right.
get it. That sucks. That's a terrible thing that happened. But like, you know, you
Well, I
base
used to
everything
joke.
on
I
that.
used to joke around that, like, we all know that Rage Against the Machine, right? They're political. They have a message, social justice as well. And I used to think that, like, there are these kids at Ozfest who go see Rage Against the Machine. They don't know what the hell he's talking about. It's a bunch of 17-year-old guys in the crowd. I hate my dad, and just running and punching each other in the face. It's the same crowd, right?
What does
music for
assimilation
guys-
mean?
Hold on a second, though. I would have to say that Rage Against the Machine also comes off as self-serious, but then they actually have something to say. I scanned these lyrics because of the self-seriousness and because of the connection to the Armenian history and genocide. I was looking for some real content here, and I didn't find it. It sounded like teenagers who had just discovered the F word and wanted to use it as many times as possible.
Wait, that's on this album? Why didn't I put this through a word analyzer? Oh man. All right, Tom. I dropped the ball on that one.
It's okay.
If you did a word cloud of this, it would just be
Right, exactly.
that would be just the biggest.
Inaudible grunt is just parenthetical in there. Yeah. It is a very strange mix of lyrics, to your point, Rob, that some of them are entirely disposable, comically so. And then some of them are so overly serious that I took it as like a farcical mix, but I guess it was not. And it was a very intentional, like, I really have this message I have to get out there about, I don't know how much I hate people who like kombucha. And
I think we've alienated like 2/3 of the population already. in this episode.
I agree. I was hoping that amidst that they were taking a neo-Dadaist approach or something to being in a band. Dada being the art movement, where Marcel Duchamp had the urinal to try to get displayed in a Paris museum and stuff like that. Like, it's so off the wall that it's trying to deconstruct your preconceived notions of what this stuff even means. But yeah, you're not saying that, so now I like it even less.
So just a quick some quick notes on the production. So this was recorded partially at Sound City in California, along with The Mansion, which is Rick Rubin's The Mansion, mixed by a woman named Sylvia Massey, who has done a ton of hard rock and metal albums as well. From a mixing standpoint, I did go and listen to a little bit of what I thought were the pseudo contemporaries at the time in '98, which were the Deftones and Korn. And it definitely has a different sound. I know that sounds ridiculous. I'm just waiting for you guys to burst out laughing.
Well, this has a different sound than anything. Even though this is, if you strip out the vocals, it's somewhat boilerplate other than the disjointedness. The vocals really sets this so far apart from really anything else that I've ever heard. And I'd definitely give him that.
which, by the way, is what made the Cookie Monster stuff even more annoying. Because like you don't need that's a trope that I think really terrible singers go to when they're trying to be powerful or whatever, and like Wah! But Serge has got a killer voice, and he can get that power across in so many different ways.
Yeah.
So when he did that, it was more kind of bowing to the expectations of what, and
Oh, you're heavy, so you have to scream like
and
this.
that really annoyed me every time I heard that. It's like, you could have done so many cooler things that nobody else could do. Everybody could do that.
Right.
Adam just did it right before this call. I did a great impression.
I'm sure it takes some practice also to do it for a whole evening. But you know what other rock singer this reminded me of? I don't know if you guys are familiar with this character. His name's Mike Patton, and he was the lead
Mr.
singer
Bungle.
of Faith No More and also of Mr. Bungle. But listeners might know him as Faith No More because they had a couple hits in the 90s. And he's also this very rangy singer And yeah, Mr. Bungle is a great touchstone here. I bet a lot of people have not listened to those records. They're extremely strange, kind of in the same way this is. They're not as heavy or in your face. They veer into lounge, Caribbean territory occasionally. But anyway, you have a similar kind of vocalist who almost seems like he's joking all the time because he's all over the map.
Does weird voices in the middle of like singing and stuff like that. Like, and that's unique and that's interesting and that keeps me engaged, which is what I really liked about Surge's delivery. I'm glad, Adam, that you said that they developed as a band after this, got more complex and got more interesting. And maybe, I don't know, I probably didn't take themselves less seriously than another song about self-righteous suicide. I'm going to guess is they're pretty stuck on those deep themes. But yeah, this seemed like a good first effort for a band.
Well, let me throw them a quick compliment because I'm coming into this band almost completely new, but I did go take a quick listen to their biggest hits from that follow-up record, such as Toxicity and
Ariel's
Chop Suey. What's the one about leaving the keys on the table? That's Chop Suey.
That's Chop Suey, yeah.
Wake up!
And listen, it's certainly recognizable as the same band, but it does feel more mature. It feels more rhythmically complex. It feels more melodically complex. So right away, I kind of got that sense, even on a glancing view, that they did continue to develop. Makes me feel like that was the record to listen to, though, not this one.
I agree with that. I had the thought that it's sort of the bizarro version of that concept where like you write your best shit on your first album, where it seems like, I don't know that they have some huge body of work that I find impressive, but it did get better than this for sure.
So one through line that I did appreciate is that these guys just don't care. Not that they don't care about their craft or their art, but they just don't care what they thought would sell. I mean, these guys were truly being honest with their sound if they wanted to. And I know it's probably splitting hairs between the Deftones and some of the other contemporaries at the time, but they were doing what they did. And yeah, I do appreciate just the weirdness and that they didn't necessarily bow to what they thought would sell, because nobody honestly wanted to put these guys on the record or on the radio. Rick Rubin was saying that after the first album, I guess K-Rock, right, which is a really big radio station. Remember those radio stations in Los Angeles? And they vowed never to play System of a Down because they were just too weird. And then a year later, they were like the most requested band on K-Rock. So they definitely did their own thing, and I appreciate that.
Well, there's also that interesting story about the concert that they were going to play for
K-Rock.
K-Rock.
Oh my God, yeah. So the story there is that this was for the release of Toxicity, their second album. Not even they realized how much of a grassroots audience and crowd that they were going to draw. So they had written the permit for, some album release in the streets. And I think they said like 2,000, and like 12,000 people showed up, and the cops were like, you can't play. The audience, imagine that, full of System of a Down fans, got angry and friggin' looted and trashed the place. It showed up on the news. And this was 2 days before their album dropped, Toxicity. And you really can't get much better. Wow. I mean, it's terrible that there was a riot, but I don't think anybody was killed or hurt, but talk about promotion.
Another interesting factoid from that is that, the National Guard came out, and like there was rioting in the streets of LA because of the System of a Down show. And it was a huge national story. And this was September 3rd, 2001.
Yeah.
And so everybody forgot about it immediately. It's like, that big LA riot thing that we were going to make a big hay about for the next, 8 news cycles went away pretty damn fast.
Yeah. Also, it was white people, so we probably buried it pretty quick either way, right?
Fair enough.
Right.
Well, I also liked how they were going to go on tour with a couple of other bands, and they were supposed to start on like September 14th. Oof. And out of respect, they waited until September 21st to go on tour.
Oh, that's very kind of
Which
them.
I get it. You have to, life has to go on, but they were just sort of, the documentary I watched was just like, out of respect for the tragic events, they waited until
half of a fortnight.
21st. It's like, you waited a week. Good for you.
I also appreciate these guys, again, that came up kind of through the gauntlet when they opened for Slayer on a worldwide tour, and Slayer is notorious for just destroying the opening act. I mean, everything from throwing batteries on stage and food at them to just screaming at them.
I think
you mean the fans
do that, right?
Yes.
I was like, damn,
pretty
dude, that's
awesome.
fucked up, man.
Yeah, the Slayer in the band just got a bunch of like 9-volt batteries. They're just whipping them at you from the side.
You
of the
guys
stage.
suck.
No, I
Performance
read
art.
I read that anecdote too, and I definitely do relate to that. In the same way that just imagine opening for System of a Down and the rabid fan. You know, this is an angry group
Yeah.
of young men in general.
Yep.
You know,
Or to bring it back to last week, I think one of my favorite rock and roll quotes is Tom Petty talking about opening for Bruce Springsteen. And he's like, man, I got off stage and I was like, man, they were booing me the whole time. And he's like, they weren't booing you. They were saying Bruce. And he's like, well, what's the difference?
All right.
Right.
So let's get into some of these great songs. Actually, sorry, quick note. System of a Down has sold 40 million albums throughout their career. They this album was released and reached 128 on the Billboard Top 200. It was certified platinum, but not until 2.5 years later, after Toxicity was released, became super popular. Then everybody went back and got the first album.
can we pause and talk about some of the? We've thrown out K-Rock, we've thrown out Rick Rubin, and it's feeling just a little inside baseball, right? So,
Sure.
For those not who didn't grow up in LA, which is none of us, my understanding of K-Rock is that it is the LA rock station for like the last
Right.
40 years. And so they are
Yep.
really like the tastemakers of what people are listening to. And I think the general vibe of that station is that they were so big because they're in one of the biggest markets. They're in a market where lots of bands move to LA to try to make it. So they're slipping early demo tapes under the door of these DJs. And they were able to maintain, even over time, radio stations. They played fewer and fewer of things the DJs actually wanted to play and instead just played from a list. I think
Right.
K-Rock is thought of as one of those places that maintained that DJ integrity longer. And so anyway, if they were ultimately stamped by K-Rock, that is certainly a big part of their success, especially being kind of hometown heroes. The other piece is Rick Rubin, which we all know who this guy is. He's a large bearded Buddhist man, but
Yes.
he's known for producing a wide variety of records, right? Starting with
Yeah.
creating Def Jam records back in the 80s. We talked about him in the Beastie Boys conversation because he made License to Ill with the Beastie Boys, but then he also went on and produced Slayer records and has this kind of metal vein. He produced Tom Petty's Wildflower. Since Tom Petty's already come up, he produced the Red Hot Chili Peppers' Blood Sugar Sex Magic.
Well, wasn't his mansion where they filmed that documentary, The Funky Monks, where you remember that for Blood Sugar Sex Magic? They did like a little documentary, and I remember it was filmed in this kind of old looking mansion. I don't know if that was his place or not.
It could be. I don't know if he got the place after his riches or before, but anyway, he's sort of a producer du jour. Like if Rick Rubin decides to produce your album tomorrow, you're sort of already in a way.
Yeah, we're talking, 150 huge smash hit albums under his belt.
Yeah.
All right, so let's dive back into the music here. So let's roll a little bit more of Sweet Pea, which, in their defense, I think is a good mile marker for them as to what you're going to hear on the rest of the album.
Few chords or riffs were somewhat major key-ish. Like it actually felt like pleasing in some way. And that very quickly went by the wayside. And also something that drove me insane about this song, he was doing the Spanish tongue rolls during when he says everyone, he's like, everyone. Like,
Yes.
why? What is that?
Oh, dude, I love that. That was really cool, man.
Everyone cried. Everyone cried. Everyone cried.
I really thought
Why
that was
not?
awesome.
Did you hear anything else he did on the album? Everything is weird.
Yeah.
it is.
Can we get a weirder take?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and this song, start your album off. This song is about pedophilia in the church and how religious extremists destroy stuff.
And you felt the best way to get that
Is it
message
really,
across
though?
was to misspell the title egregiously.
Right.
Well, okay. So the opening lyrics of this, I had an out-of-body experience the other day. Her name was Jesus. And for her, everyone cried. Everyone cried. Everyone cried. Try her philosophy. Try her philosophy. Try her philosophy. Try. I don't where does the pedophilia come in there? That's really, really
That's a stretch.
hidden
Hang
meaning
on.
in there. Like,
I had a note somewhere. I think it's where I had a note somewhere. I think it's where they're talking about laying on the ground and
lie
going
naked on the
to-
floor, let the Messiah go through our souls. Lie naked on the floor, let the Messiah go all through our souls. Die, 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 die. Why? I want to fuck my way to the garden because everyone needs a motherfucker.
All right, yeah, it's pretty stupid. Now that you
It's
say
not
that.
like I'm not getting, oh man, really deep message about child molestation in the church. Taking John Paul II down, pulling a Sinead O'Connor. Like, none of that shit's going on
Which,
here.
Rob, to your point, that's an inherent problem, right? You had Rage Against the Machine. Rage Against the Machine rocked. And you could at least get the idea of what he was saying, right?
Yeah.
Because he was using sentences that were around a theme or a topic.
Yeah, some of those that work forces are the same that burn crosses. I get it. I got what
I
he's
get
talking
that,
about.
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this song was kind of a mess, and I'm not trying to just shit on it, but I had some very specific things that I also did not like about it. One, there's I can't recall when in the song this happened, but I just have a note that says, "Are there jackals singing on backing vocals?"
Oh, I think I know the part where it's like, "Do." He's just screaming something in the background. The guitar player is shouting something in the background.
There's also, did anyone pick up on? There's a little bass break at like the 1 minute mark, and it's the weakest. It drops. We should put this in. It drops out for a beat, and it's this bass break, and I was expecting, and it's just like doo doo doo, and then it kicks back in. It's like, why did you?
It's right up there with the runaway train turnaround.
Yes. Doo 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 doo. And then the other note, and this is the last thing I'll say about this song. I don't know why I wrote this. It must have just been how I was feeling. So I have this blender that if you put too much shit in it,
Go on.
if you put too much shit in it, or if it's too thick and you don't it hadn't put enough water in it, it just starts going. And it's not the same as the that we've been ripping on. It's like something very distinct that is a specific timbre and tone that it just really got to me.
Gonna need you to record that so we can drop that into the edit.
Yeah, right.
Oh yeah,
Oh, that's going in at the end.
we're gonna
Tune in for Adam
Dude.
remixing Alan's metal scream.
I'm not burning out the motor of my blender for these guys.
I'm gonna take a little bit of a contrarian view. I kind of like this song. It goes hard, and I was picturing myself as a younger person listening to this, just full of that undirected angst and rage. And like, if once I read the lyrics, I was like, oh, these lyrics are terrible, but I couldn't understand what he was saying, so it didn't bump me when I was listening to the song. And it's kind of just shouty and angry and angsty and like I could see just like kind of headbanging around my apartment by myself with that going on in my 20s and like actually kind of getting into it.
I could see that for you too.
Yeah. I know that's not a compliment, but it had a bit of that. Yeah, just like unsettled anger and unsettled like energy that I just have to kind of get out there somehow. And that's their audience. They nailed it. And I'm not that audience right now, but I can picture in my head when I was that audience, and I could get down with it.
But that to me feels like their whole vibe, and I don't think this is the best example of that. So again, if this was the only song I was hearing of theirs ever, and it was in the on a mix or on the radio, then maybe I would have some of those feelings. Although I've never personally related to that kind of undirected, intense anger thing. It's just would never be me personally. But I get what you're saying. I just think they do it better. They're kind of a one note.
No, they are one note. Maybe I'm more specifically speaking to the opening track, opening album vibe. I had listened to a few of their hits before. Certainly not familiar with their catalog. So when this came on, I was kind of like, okay, all right, yeah, I can get down with this. I got tired of the sound by the end of the album every time I listened to it.
Yeah.
And as I came back to this song again, it sort of did it less and less for me every time. But there's just something about the fact that the first time I heard it going in just completely raw and hearing it and being like, oh, yeah, okay, I can get down with it. It sort of held nostalgia is not quite the right word because I'm like literally nostalgic for 3 days ago, but it gave me that sort of initial dipping my toe in the water, and I didn't hate it. I wanted to hate this band. I think I wanted to hate this band a lot more than I ended up hating them.
I don't know. When you start off with gross rock and roll misspelling like this, it just really, you're not getting off on the right foot with me.
My first note, so I had a tweet written after I listened to this, the first one, which is, this is for people who want to be in a rock band but want to remain virgins. Because this is nothing but like a sea of angry dudes. This is the opposite of Aerosmith and rock stardom. It's just teen angst and 20s angst.
That's a great question. Yeah, no ladies,
Right,
no ladies at these shows.
I seriously doubt that I did see these guys in Camden once, actually, as part of some rock festival or something. It wasn't Ozfest, but it was something else.
I would have been more scared of that than actual Camden.
Well, and you want to talk about
That says a lot, by the way.
you want to talk about a genre of music that does not translate to stadium rock? Holy crap. It just sounded like mud. When you get to those lower frequencies and it's that loud and there's double bass, it just sounds like Alan's blender, but at like 140 decibels for an hour and a half.
Well, especially
it's rough.
especially Ozfest, which is like a long affair, which means that most of it's during the day. And that Camden Stadium's like open air for most of it. And so you're like outside in the sunlight listening to this music? That doesn't track at all.
Translate.
In a club in Little Armenia in LA, that sounds pretty badass. I could get down on that.
I'm just picturing all the guys throughout history who have tried to get their girlfriends to listen to this and appreciate it.
They probably weren't their girlfriend for very long after that.
Rob, I will relate a story. Actually, I don't think it was me and you. It might have been me and Phil. I went to go see The Sword. I'm trying to think of who I saw The Sword with. I saw him at Bimbo's, and I was back at the bar getting a drink, and they started playing Working Man. And I was like, hell fucking yeah, this is great. And there was this woman standing next to me at the bar, super attractive woman, and was clearly like so not into it. And I was kind of like, how do you not like this? This is like it's The Sword playing Rush. She was just like, my boyfriend made me come. And I was like, okay. I mean, I get it. But like, come on, it doesn't get what these guys are awesome and they're playing one of the best Rush songs. This is amazing.
The Sword playing Rush. It's a real panty dropper, Tom.
It should have been. But yeah, I mean, I was not there with my wife. I was definitely like, oh yeah, zero interest in this whatsoever. No interest. You got to know your audience, right?
Sure.
All right, let's move this thing along to the next song we're going to talk about. This one is called Sugar.
Which only makes rifles. They've made exactly one pistol in the entire history of their time as a weapons manufacturer, and it was like a match pistol. Huge, freaking huge. It would not fit in your pocket. It would not be considered cute. It's an ugly, gigantic pistol. And like, why would you even pick that and say like, I got it from Sacco. It's cute. It fits in my pocket. Like, you fucking didn't. Pick it, like, why? It doesn't
Now I don't like these guys now.
This is the kind of shit you're not going to get anywhere else, guys.
I specifically was like, hold on a second. Sacco's a rifle manufacturer. I got to go check that out. And I went down through the entire history of everything they've ever made. I found exactly one pistol they ever made that was ever produced, ever sold. And it was like, hasn't even been produced since the early 80s. Like, you're a fucking liar, all right? Liar.
Serge, how dare you not research your research? Fuck it. I'll cut that one. I don't know what it was about. Some have mused that it's potentially sugar is supposed to be cocaine, but nothing else in the song. I don't get it.
This quote unquote singles.
This was a single. Yeah.
I just don't get it. It reminds me, there's this is a digression, but I don't know if anyone follows the NBA at all, but there's this famous quote where somebody has this awesome dunk in a game and the announcer goes, if you don't like that, then you don't like NBA basketball. And that's just how I feel about this. I just don't like metal, I guess. I don't know what else to say.
You can like lots of metal without liking this. I think there's lots of metal fans that don't like this. It's its own thing. They really have, they have some unique stuff going on here.
This song helped identify this, and the last tune we're going to talk about helped me. Again, I think I'm renaming the genre to spaz metal because there just seems spastic. There's a point in the song where it breaks down and there's hits, and then he does like weird voices and another hit, and it's
very
just
disjointed.
So,
Like I could
cool.
see this not being about, but I can certainly see every song on this album as being inspired by cocaine. Like that makes a ton of sense to me.
These guys
but
strike
yeah,
me as probably pretty straight edge, I would imagine. Is that the case?
yeah, so Surge is a super laid back. It's so odd, right? So other people had mentioned that you see this guy on stage and, you know, they look like they're going to murder everyone. The music, you know, feels like everybody in the crowd's going to murder each other. And you talk to him afterwards and he's super soft-spoken, totally chilled out. I saw an interview with Rainn Wilson that he did where he was all, you know, mantra'd out. Like he's just a very laid-back dude. I'm not sure about the other guys, but at least Serj Tankian's very, very, maybe he took some of those Rick Rubin vibes and went all Buddhist on us.
Although I guess there is the one song that we'll talk about in a little bit that sounds like it's probably about having like a bad trip or something. I don't know. I guess that remains to
that's
be.
the one where you're in the sky.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So, stuck in the sky.
So at the end of this song, it kind of does that like stop, slow, start to speed up. Lyrics over that, I would like it so much more because the lyrics are really bad over it. That's the
What do I feel? What do I say?
yeah. I sit in my desolate room, no lights, no music, just anger. I've killed everyone. I'm away forever, but I'm feeling better. How do I feel? What do I say? Fuck you! It all goes away. Like, come on.
Jeez.
No
so
lyrics over that
bad.
would have been so much better. Or even just
You're
him just
right.
going blah, 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 skibbity, blah, dibbity, blah, blah. Like
Just
I can
picturing
think
Al-
yeah, dark
I'm
scatting.
picturing Alan in the studio with his blender.
I should copyright that.
What it
as a
sounded
sample.
better. Again, the B-52s, the guy's credited with playing a smoke alarm. You could have been on this album playing the blender. All right. Anything we want to say on Sugar
Can you say the title the correct way, Adam?
versus Sugar? I don't know. How else would you say it?
Sugar.
Sugar.
First you get the sugar, then you get the powder.
All right. Next, we're going to.
For those reasons, I thought there was some nice guitar work. The kick-in, though, just ruined it from that
screams.
intro. And this was actually one of the songs where like I found myself at times, I think it was either the song or a different song, where I could sense when a kick-in was about to come in with a scream. And I was like physically bracing myself just because
Here it
I knew
goes.
it was just going to hit me.
Listen, attention drummers, double bass is overused. We're not impressed. Stop.
Yeah, I mean, I can't do it, but there's a lot of stuff I can't do that's really unimpressive.
So I thought this tune was kind of cool because, well, first off, the PLUCK of the title stands for politically lying, unholy, cowardly killers. This is pretty blatantly about the genocide in 1915. I think they actually say genocide, potentially Armenia, potentially 1915. It's pretty out there. It's pretty on the nose.
They don't drop 1915. They drop genocide a lot. In this
A
song.
lot.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's what I believe is referred to as a backronym, where like you come up with a word and then you come up with the words that it is an acronym for.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
yeah. There's
Like
no way that they started with that first.
I assume
Sure,
that's
right.
how
Yeah.
all of them were created. It just seems like they're all shoehorned in, every acronym.
I was going to say another fun example of a backronym is when people try to tell you that rap stands for rhythm and poetry.
Yeah.
It's not the case.
It's
Obviously.
you're liars.
Cool stands for rip rap rip it do.
I dig this song because it has a couple different things going on. It's got that little soundscapey intro thing. It does. This is a good example of what I consider the blast beat, right? Which is baka, 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 baka. You know, very sharp stop, very well timed, pretty tight. He breaks into like a disco beat, might be one of the only counter melodies on the album where the guitar is doing something and the singer is doing something else, and they play really nicely together. There's also a weird time thing going on where it's in 4, and then I've listened to this from 4 to 2, but they're on the upbeat, the 1 and, because it goes from 1, 2, 3, 4 to 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1. It's just,
I was trying to count that out myself, and I was like, I'm pretty sure this drops into a 2 because it's not an odd time. It's not a 3. It's not a 5. It's not a 7.
but when you come back in, the snare is hitting on the and.
They changed
really
the
weird.
accents, but I think they just changed. I just think it went to a 2 with a different accent on it. Interesting, like there's interesting stuff going on in this song. My note on this is like they should use harmony more. They use it well in this song. They should use it more. But this is also not the venue to get across your super serious lyrics about the genocide. Because again, I can't understand a goddamn word you're saying.
And they put it last on the album as well. This is track 14 or 13 or something.
Elimination, elimination, elimination. Die. Why? Walk down, walk down. A whole race genocide. Take away all our pride. A whole race genocide. Revolution, the only solution. These are, again, like, I know you're angry about it. I think I get why you're angry about it. And, just take a step back for a second there, buddy. But also, if you're going to try to put out a, there's a reason why Eric Clapton did Tears in Heaven as like a super stripped down, like acoustic
Why
song.
are you
He was
gotta do
trying to get some, some real, impactful lyrics out front, as opposed to like just a mush of, I can't understand what the hell you're saying. And I have to read the liner notes to figure out what your message is.
I thought around 2 minutes in, they dropped into what sounded like Siamese Dream era Smashing Pumpkins kind of vibe.
The harmony, high harmony guitar.
Yeah, it was very refreshing. Okay, now back into the breach, boys.
I do think that song had some interesting like pockets. The constituent parts, I think, were decent, but they just didn't last very long, and they would change very abruptly, and it just felt like a very disjointed experience. Not that I need to be hit over the head.
That is their sweet spot, is like disjointed. Don't settle in.
I agree. You definitely don't know where they're going next. I guess that's to their credit.
Sure.
I do think if they let the rhythm section have a little more space that you could hear, because in later albums, they're really tight. Their drummer, I think the drummer is probably the most technically talented in the band, and he and the bass player have a pretty tight groove when they get into it and let it marinate for
They're good musicians.
Like that.
I mean,
But that's the thing. They have no patience. They exhibit very little patience.
In no place in my notes is the word groove at all. It does not fit. All
right. Point taken. All right, let's go on to our next song on the list. I bet you thought it was tuba.
I was just like,
there's a tuba on this album.
My note is, if Tom Waits was going to cover a System of the Down song, this would be the one that he would cover.
Well, I'll give them some credit here that this predates. There was a little mini revival in indie rock of this kind of Eastern European orchestra march beat kind of thing via bands like Gogol Bordello or that band Beirut, and so they're maybe a little predating that vibe. But this is, the lyrics, again, just like completely pull you out of any possible enjoyment of this thing.
Well, this is the one that I thought, to our point earlier, asking like my suggestion that they were probably straight edge, I guess, does contradict the fact that this sounds like it's maybe about like a bad trip or weed experience. I couldn't quite figure out what was happening.
Yeah, when your stars are baked and your rivers fly, did you ever believe you were stuck in the sky? It's like, I don't know, maybe. Like, it depends on how like super duper high I was, but like kind of not really.
Maybe they should be writing children's books instead.
Go over real well.
Let me tell you about the time that the Ottoman Empire's jackbooted thugs kicked in the skulls of children your age. Like, oh my God.
This tune also has one of the very few solos you're going to hear on the album. Let's 22 or 23 at the time. And he didn't seem like a very confident guy. It's like if you were to ask me, Adam, why don't you play solos? I would make up something like, or why don't you play fast? Oh, I like more, soulful things. No, it's because I'm not good. Like I can play riff rock, but if you ask me to solo, I'm going to run off stage crying. And it was just funny to hear him be like, "Oh well, we're not really about that. I'm not really into that." So it was interesting to hear him finally do a solo on the album. Not necessarily the most complex.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and then you're like, "Oh, that's why. That's why you don't do solos."
You played the melody. Okay, that makes sense.
I know this is a digression, but we haven't talked about their facial hair yet, right? Because this is the worst trend in beards that I could really think of, which is either the single braid or I think the guitar player for a while had the double braid, the kind of coming down off of the chin strap.
Double Fu Manchu.
Coming off of almost nothing else on the face. It's ridiculous.
I feel like you have to be shirtless when you're rocking that on stage.
Pull that off.
It's just part of the ensemble.
Yeah, you're not like wearing khakis and a polo and just like, "Hey guys."
At least the Limp Bizkit guy had the decency to put some face paint on.
I saw a lot of images of them with face paint on. Like Serge has the third eye painted on a whole lot and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So they were really into Kiss, actually. That was one of the bands that they were really into growing up was Kiss. So I think it was maybe the guitar player's idea that those first couple of shows that they were playing in some of those small LA clubs, man, they did up the face paint. It looks wacky.
You know what the funny thing is that Kiss sucks. And so
I was gonna say, yeah, such the writers of such excellent songs as "Love Gun" and "Lick It Up."
Not a gimmick at all.
All right, we're going to round things out here. We're going to bring it home with a tune called Darts, which I picked as potentially the low light of the album. So here, let's
podcast this I think it's time we make a change here.
But Alan,
What?
do you mean?
If you were to
It's just not cool,
like
man.
Gollum.
It's something that my kids would do, right? Like you said, Alan, like they found the mic and they're like, "Rah, rah, 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 rah."
There's nothing redeeming about the song whatsoever.
Is there
man.
and is there like an alarm clock at the end kind of going underneath it? It just sounds like there's like one of those like old school double belled analog alarm clocks kind of. If you have your headphones up really loud, it's kind of just like this song is boring as hell because they had a formula, and their formula was like, just throw a whole bunch of shit at you. You never know what's gonna come. Whoa, it's gonna be crazy. And then they're like, okay, let's just play the same 4 chords the entire song. How about we do that? And then even when we break it down, we're just gonna do the same 4 chords the entire time for the entire song.
Boring would have been fine. I would have been fine with boring, but this was like, this is offensive.
Well, it's really funny because think about that. When you have the loudest guitars and the loudest drums and the loudest and distorted everything, and it's still boring. It tells you you're doing something wrong. Like we said at the top, this was a rough week. This took a lot out of me physically. I couldn't listen to it, really out loud too much. So
For this one, I just wrote Blink-182 in hell.
Adam, I want to go back to your point about this being draining. Like hard rock albums that are very samey do physically tire me out. Like by the time I'm done listening to them, it's like, oh God, another one. Oh, let me guess, you're gonna use the same guitar tone again. Okay, ooh, and it's gonna be another fast one. And then
when I was 25, again, this resonated different with me, right? Again, it was other albums, but it rocked and I was into it. And the fact that we were playing some of these tunes, there's an energy, like there's a crazy amount of energy when you were in this mix on stage playing this kind of music with 4 or 5 other guys, and when it's tight. I mean, it's a very cool experience. That doesn't necessarily translate to a 41-year-old guy. So it's trying to keep things in perspective.
You also were not playing any of it. You didn't play darts in the set, right?
No. But similar. Well, no, because you're right. The tunes from Toxicity were just better.
I think they're just better.
Playing darts into Laid by James would have made for a nice segue.
Fellas, medley. It's going to be darts, Sweet Home Alabama, Peephole, and then bring it home with
Living on a Prayer.
What's that Nelly song?
Right.
If you want to go and take a ride with me, put an air in the back. And I've seen you cover that song. Yeah,
I was going to say, you've seen our set.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
You have a set list.
I remember you came out into the crowd and were like handing the mic to people to do the,
Oh my
hey,
God.
must be the money line.
man.
Adam probably got
And
laid
you
way
s-
more than us, by the way.
Oh, 1,000,000%. But I remember you came up and you like put the mic in front of my face and was like, hey, must be the money.
You could have just screamed.
The
at me
worst
like,
delivery
you-
of all time. It's kind of like, Adam, I thought you knew me well enough to know that this is just not,
this is
not
not
going
my
to happen.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun time.
20 years after the fact, I apologize.
Yeah, it's okay. I got super blackout drunk at that show, so I had a good time, supposedly.
All right, folks, let's bring this home.
Yeah, fuck it. He seems to like what we're doing, so let's just go with him. And so there's a lot about this band. I don't want to shit on them as musicians and kind of their contribution to music. They seem to have a lot of people that really like this. But there's no way I can possibly say that you like must listen to this before you die.
Alan, I just want to jump in here for a second. You're telling me that they were like, well, Rick fucking Rubin, Rick the goddamn hitmaker Rubin wants to sign our band. But I don't know. We got this other guy over here. His name's like Mutt Stanford, and I think maybe we'll sign with him instead. What the hell were they thinking? He's Rick fucking Rubin.
I don't have the full context on that. That's just something I read that I don't think they were kind of weighing all their options and saying, oh, here's Rick Rubin and here's this guy. I think it was more like they maybe had some other things in the works and he kind of came along. Oh, part of it was he did say, and this was possibly said earlier, that he was straight up like, I don't think this is something that like the masses are going to like. And so I do think that was something they had to like factor in. But yes, you're right. They're in no position to turn him down, but I do think it was a decision.
Just maybe chill on the Armenian genocide stuff a little bit. Is that possible? No. Okay. I get it.
All right.
You know what?
All right, that's a no from Alan. Let's throw it over to Rob.
What I recommend instead of listening to this record is go to Chinatown, any Chinatown in America, and find that old guy, street musician, who's playing that one-stringed violin where he just bends the note all the time. You get a pretty good idea of what Serge Tankian's vocal performance is like. No, it's a definite no for me. This is borderline unlistenable. I'm going to go on record and say this was my worst week of the podcast thus far.
Wow.
We just did Kid Rock.
Holy crap, that's saying something.
I think it was motivated partly by the fact that I was listening to it on public transit and I was feeling like it must be bleeding through my headphones and I was feeling embarrassed by that aspect of it.
In Thailand.
Right. Well, so that's what I was going to say because, for those not on the call, I'm living abroad right now and I recently met someone online to like get together and play music with, like a new friend. And when you first connect with another musician, you go through this like first date little dance of what bands do you like? And I'm kind of desperate to even have friends here and play music. But I admit, this happened a couple weeks ago, but I admit I had been thinking like, what would be a disqualifier here in this text string?
If he like saw your phone on the ground and saw that you would listen to this album 20 times in 3 days.
Dude, this guy listens to Nana Cherry on repeat.
So the good news is now I know if someone proposes to play music with me and they say, I like System of a Down. You know what? I'm not going to play like that. I don't want to hear you play like that. It's not going to work, dude. I'm sorry. Date over. It's
an easy way to filter out the noise,
All right, Tom, what do you got for us?
Why'd I leave this album off the list? I wanted to. This album fucking sucks. I'm sorry, I can't get down with it. I liked a couple of the songs in this, but I can't get down with it. And their second album is a lot better. It's a lot better than this. And I'm not even a big fan of that one, but it's objectively better. Listen to that one. Listen to Toxicity. If you're like, wow, I could see a more evolved version of this speaking to me, listen to Toxicity. Here's one of the other things that I will say. Oftentimes I will look at an album that I didn't necessarily like, but say it was the progenitor of a whole bunch of different music that borrowed from it, grew out of it. Nothing sounds like this. This is kind of its own thing, and it sort of is almost like a musical dead end. And I don't like this little musical cul-de-sac that they live on. And so don't bother making that turn. Keep on driving.
All right. This is Adam, and I'm going to echo some of the things that were said. I do appreciate that these guys just didn't care. I also think that potentially their other albums are the ones that you should be listening to. So, as Tom said, Toxicity, Mesmerize, or Hypnotize, I think they're just better. There's more melody. The guys kind of figured out like, hey, we can sing. Maybe we should do that. Maybe we should do harmony. I think the music got a little more complex. Again, there's just more melody. I like melody, and this album lacked a lot of that. So unfortunately, it's a no for me as well. I am sorry, Serge Tankian. It's a no for System of a Down.
He has a badass name if it's any consolation prize.
Do you know what his record company is called? Surgical Strike.
Nice.
Good.
I think the money from the 40 million album sales is probably much more of a consolation prize.
Yes, if you look at the way he lives now, where he's just going out, I just made a jazz band.
What?
I will say that the documentary was kind of a little Spinal Tappy, because he's like, oh yeah, I'm working with orchestras now, and I even put together a jazz thing. I'm like, what? Okay. And now he's making paintings, the true artist who is just awash in money and just doing his thing. It's kind of annoying.
And I don't know why I found this funny, but I saw that the guitar player Malakian is a hardcore Edmonton Oilers fan. I don't know why I found that amusing, but they're
raised in LA.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, yeah, I assume it's because they had Gretzky when he was growing up, right? That's Gretzky played for that team, I think, in the 80s. Is that
yes,
right? We don't have our resident NHL expert on the call right now.
Yeah, Phil could, close the gaps for us.
Yeah.
All right, there you have it, folks. It's a no for System of a Down. Now we're going to throw things over to Tom, who's got the Albinator all revved up, ready to go to tell us what we're going to be listening to 30 times again this upcoming week. Tom, what do you got?
Hopefully we're going to go back to that well of spaz metal and get another album. I would be quitting the podcast if that was the case. So here's to hoping something a little bit more palatable this week. Without any further ado, drum roll, please. Next week, we will be listening to something that's a little different. It's the album Purple Rain by the artist Prince, in case you needed
little
that.
known album. I think I've heard of
As
that.
opposed to the Purple Rain by Slayer. Right? It's their follow-up, Purple Rain in Blood.
Yes, that was
That's good.
well done,
Nice,
sir.
nice,
Well done.
nice Jeopardy clue there.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be a fun one. I am a fan of this album. It's got some highs and lows, like all of Prince's catalogs, but this is a good one.
It's hard to feel ambivalent about Prince. I'll say that.
I definitely have some hot takes on Prince for sure.
I do as well.
Uh-huh.
So this is going to be a fun week. This will be a spirited discussion, as they always are.
This should be interesting. I remember, Rob, you and I were sitting at the hearth back in our old Tuesday night drinking days when we'd get done band practice and go get Miller High Lifes at the hearth. And they had a nice little old jukebox, and I put on Purple Rain, and some asshole was just like loudly espousing how Purple Rain is not a good song. And I was like, man, okay, say what you want about Prince and his catalog and the inconsistencies therein, but Purple Rain's a damn good song, and you probably should shut the fuck up about that.
I know it's going to blow your mind. I don't remember that particular debacle, but
When Tom got his ass kicked over Purple Rain.
I did not get my ass kicked over Purple Rain. I sat and seethed in silence, as is my way.
That is perfect Tom's story.
Yeah.
All right, folks, did we get it right? Did we get it wrong? We would love your feedback. Please shoot us an email at 1001albumcomplaints@gmail.com. That's 1001, the number, albumcomplaints@gmail.com. We look forward to getting them all the time. And we appreciate your feedback. And with that, I think we're going to wrap things up. So for 1001 Album Complaints, I'm Adam.
I'm Alan.
I'm Rob.
And I'm Tom.
And then Alan, you send me your blender noise on your iPhone, and I'll throw that in too.